Everybody, it's time for another First Drives with Fred, and I'm sitting in a vehicle that is pretty ridiculous, to put it bluntly. This thing's crazy. This is a Jeep Wrangler, so it's the open top style Wrangler, and it's probably, well, it's a couple things. It's the most powerful Wrangler probably ever built, probably the most powerful open top Jeep ever. It has the most horsepower, the most torque. It's probably the quickest. I think it's 0 to 60 in 4.5 seconds. And it's also probably, it's got to definitely be the most expensive Wrangler CJ that Jeep has ever made. This is the Wrangler Rubicon 392, 392 cubic inches V8 Hemi engine, 470 horsepower, 470 pound-feet of torque, 0 to 60 in 4.5 seconds. And it's ridiculous. It's like the silliest Jeep they've ever made, and also the most fun. And also, this thing's starting price, sticker price, $74,000, which is just nuts. But it also sounds awesome. So, people have been putting V8s in Jeeps just about as long as there's been Jeeps. In fact, there were GIs during World War II who were swapping V8s into military Jeeps overseas. So, like, before they even offered a civilian Jeep, people were putting V8s in Jeeps. So it's no surprise that Jeep would finally put a V8 in the Wrangler. In fact, Jeep did put V8s in CJs. You could get a 304 V8 back in the CJ5s and CJ7s. We've actually had a couple of those on Dirt Every Day. In fact, there was a long time ago, I rescued a CJ7 with a 304 down in Texas. Then we also did the Jeep truck thing, which was a CJ5 that they had stretched out into the length of a pickup truck. It was kind of a hodgepodge machine, but it also had a 304. In fact, my very first Jeep that I ever owned was a V8 304 CJ5. It was probably a 71, I think. And so what happened? Jeep all of a sudden for years just stopped putting V8s in their open top rigs. You could never get a V8 YJ, TJ, JK, and then all of a sudden the JL is out for a few years, and out of nowhere, V8 Wrangler 392. Well, I can tell you what I think happened. A couple things. One, Ford showed up with the Bronco, and Jeep was like, oh, you want to come play on our playground? Well, guess what? We're going to get out our big sticks, our bigger balls, our more fun trucks. And that's when they showed up with this thing. It's so silly. But I also have another theory. Because, and I've kind of mentioned this before, in fact, if you go back and you watch some old Dirt Everyday extras, you'll see where I've kind of mentioned this theory in the past, where there was a point for like a split second, a guy named Kaniskis was running Jeep. He was like the Jeep president for, I don't know, maybe a year, maybe not even 6 months. It was kind of a short little window. And this guy Kaniskis, who you may not have ever heard of before, was the same guy that prior to running Jeep was running Dodge. when they came out with things known as the Hellcat. So basically you have a V8 guy, die-hard horsepower man, hot rod dude, and all of a sudden he's put in charge of Jeep, and they, like, I picture it like this. Comes to work, president of Jeep, calls in all the people that work for him now. Hey, what's new? What's new with Jeep? And they're like, well, we've got this Grand Cherokee, and we've got this Cherokee and this Patriot. And he was like, yeah, but what about the Jeep? He was like, oh, the Wrangler. Yes, we have this Wrangler. And he looks at it and goes, does it come with a V8? And they probably all kicked rocks and mumbled to each other. And finally he was like, get out of my office and don't come back until the Wrangler has a V8. Good for us, because they did it. They came out with a V8 Wrangler. Unfortunately for Mr. Kaniskis, he's no longer with Jeep. But thank you if it was your doing to get us a Wrangler with a 392 Hemi. Now, who buys a Jeep like this? I don't know. I mean, this thing starts at $74,000, and in a few of my searches on the internet, you see prices at $100 grand. In fact, one of the ones that I saw brand new on a dealer lot was $109,000. That means that there are now Wranglers that cost over $100 grand. There are still towns in America where you can buy a house for $100 grand. But look, I mention this every time because every time I do a first drive with Fred, I get to drive something really cool, and I'm blown away at how expensive it is, because everything is really expensive these days. Even if you were gonna go like find an old CJ5 on Facebook, Marketplace, Craigslist, wherever, you would kind of be blown away at how expensive everything has become. So, most expensive Jeep ever, fastest Jeep ever, or should I say quickest. And when I say Jeep, I'm talking about the open top Jeeps, because Jeep did offer a Hellcat powered 700 horsepower Grand Cherokee. So that was probably the most powerful Jeep ever, but in this ranking I'm going with open top Jeeps, the classic Jeeps, the Wranglers, the CJ7s. I don't think Jeep ever offered something like this to the public with this type of horsepower or this type of price tag. Okay, next question. Fuel economy. Nobody cares. If you're buying one of these, you don't care. But we're getting roughly 10 to 12 miles per gallon, which is not surprising because every time I get in it, I want to push this button that makes the exhaust really loud so that it sounds like I'm a 16-year-old kid driving his dad's Charger. But also, I want to just stand on the gas and dump fuel down the belly of this thing because it's so much fun. I don't have the Monroney, the window sticker on this particular Jeep. I know that the 392s all come with the Rubicon package. They come with a 33-inch tall tire, and after that you can upgrade. You can actually put a lift kit and 35-inch tall tires on this Jeep from the factory. So you would have a factory warranted, lifted, locked Jeep with a V8 and 35s. That's pretty cool. Unfortunately, right now, I think a lot of dealers are holding on to these things or putting crazy markups on them because they can, because there's not a lot of them out there. I don't know exactly how many are being made. I haven't gotten that number, but I don't think it's going to be a whole lot. And I also honestly don't know if they're going to make these for very long. Like, they can't put this V8, well, they're not putting the V8 in the two-door or the pickup truck currently. And when I asked some people if they would, they're like, well, you know, emission standards, certain regulations, blah, 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 excuse after that. When reality is, I think a lot of people would love a 392 powered Gladiator, especially if they stuffed it in that Mojave edition with the big old shocks. But I don't know if they're actually going to do that. And I honestly don't know, like, for most people, Like, this is a drive around and look at me button. I mean, Jeep. There is a button, literally, you can push this button and it makes the Jeep louder, so that when you're kind of cruising through the neighborhoods and you want to show off your $100,000 Wrangler, you push this button and it sounds all rumbly and cool. But at the same time, you can be a dignified grown-up and push the button and it's quiet and people won't look at you. I don't know why you would do that. Because you just spent 100 grand on a Wrangler. And it's ridiculous. Now, is 100 grand too much to spend on a V8 Wrangler? I'm sure that people have spent over 100 grand converting JKs and TJs and all these other Wranglers to a V8 over the years. I mean, you don't have to spend that much to build a V8 powered Wrangler, but I'm sure people have done it if they bought like brand new parts, brand new axles, brand new engines, swapped all that stuff into it. One thing that I'm not a really big fan of on this Jeep is the fact that it has an all-wheel drive transfer case, which means you can't really just stand on it and do a burnout because all the tires want to spin and then it just wants to go. But I'm assuming part of that was because the 392 drivetrain followed by the all-wheel drive transfer case was already available in a Grand Cherokee, so they were able to easily bring it over and stuff it into this. Plus, this thing still only has Dana 44s, so maybe they were a little bit concerned about, is that axle strong enough with a V8 and 35s, or eventually bigger, because it's only obvious that someone's going to buy this thing and then want bigger tires than just 35s. Overall, I think it's great. I think it's ridiculous. I think it's fun. It's really fast. It's loud. Fast, loud, and fun always seem to add up to be something that you want. I think you need a V8 for off-roading? Look, there's types of off-roading that you can do with a 4-cylinder and low gears and you'll be happy as a clam. But there's other types of four-wheeling, aka snow, sand, mud, places where having a V8 definitely is an advantage, and it does multiply the fun factor. So I think I'm just happy that they finally did it. I think it's cool. I don't know that they're going to make them for long, so if you're in the tax bracket that could actually take one home, you might want to jump on it before too long. And I guess that's about it. I think this thing's really cool and ridiculous. Oh, check it out. This is the one that has the full power top. You just push a button and the top opens. Unlike old Wranglers where you have to get out and undo snaps and brackets and straps and everything to get the top to open, this is the one you just push the button, which means this one is probably not the $74,000 one. This is probably the $80,000 or $94,000 or maybe $100,000 one once it has all the bells and whistles, because it also has the leather heated seats and steering wheel, basically all the stuff that when they first made Jeeps they were like, oh no, you don't need that stuff. But then people asked for it, and now you can get a $100,000 Jeep. Or you could go somewhere else and buy a house. But just remember this. You can sleep in your Jeep, but you can't do this in your house. That's it for this first drive with Fred. Go buy up all the 392 Wranglers you can so that they keep making them, because they're loud and silly. See you next time.